Welcome everyone to the Respond Customer Service webinar series, which takes place the second Tuesday of the month. We're glad you've joined us today. Before I hand things over to Jeromy to talk about today's topic, I just want to remind everyone that we have these great EMS billing trainings that take place all over the United States. We have 4 of them left, and I just checked with Leah, who is going to be the instructor at the June 20th one in Easton, Pennsylvania, and she said if someone still wanted to register, it's not too late, but contact us right away for that. Otherwise, we have some in Augusta, Georgia, in California and Texas. So please take a look at those. Those are great places to just, whether it's brushing up on skills, maybe learning some modules that you haven't used in a while or have never used, or maybe you're brand new. There's a lot of great training that goes on during those 2-day training events. So check that out. You can find that on our website under the customer community section. All right, and we want to remind you as well that if you have questions for Jeromy, you can go ahead and enter those into the GoToWebinar dashboard. You can ask your questions, enter those at any time, and Jeromy will be taking those at the end of his presentation. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jeromy. He's going to be talking about a couple of questions, which you can read there, but I'll just pass things on over to him now. So I'll let him get started.
Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate everybody tuning in today and joining us for this webinar. I'm going to be talking about 2 different topics today, the first of which is a error checking message that stated missing insured last name, and we're going to unravel that mystery just a little bit. And then the second portion of the presentation today will cover changes in box 31 on your 1500 form. So to start off, let's go back to this missing insured last name error message that is a common ticket that we've seen over the course of time. So here's the story that we're going to set for you today. I've got a call here up on my screen for the patient of fun test, but this is a patient for whom we're going to print a private bill. Now, formerly, if you made a slight error in the way you set up your patient, if you were to try to print a private bill for this patient, you would get an error message that said something like this: missing insured last name. Now, what exactly does that mean? Why do we have a patient in here without a last name? How can you save a call without a last name on your patient? It was a little bit mysterious. So a common function all of a sudden became this big mystery in running your billing program. And so this missing insured last name message, we, over the course of time, sort of decoded. And what it led us to is the fact that on this patient, if I bring up the patient just via Control F3, I'll move it over here to the side. And we'll see that under the payers for this patient, there are no payers. So in the example here of trying to print a private pay bill for this patient without the private pay payer, you can't generate that bill. Now, the error check used to say this missing insured last name. So you had to solve the mystery and decode that message in order to find out what you needed to do. Well, friends, I have good news for you today. The mystery has been solved. We've made an update to our error checking, and I'll show that to you right now. So I go back to this particular call, and just for examples here, I'm going to do a quick print single. Just going to use our private bill and generate. And what you'll see here, and I know the type is a little bit small in today's presentation, but you'll see the update in the error checking message. It says missing private payer. So for this patient number, you're missing the private payer. You can't print a bill without the payer on there. And so what we've done is we've unraveled that mystery for you and made our error checking message state specifically what you need to do and where you need to do it in order to get that taken care of. So it says go to the patient payer tab, and you must have a payer entered with the type of private. So I'll close out of this, get these out of the way, and go back to the patient. Again, Control F3 to open the patient from the call. And on the Payers tab, the error checking message is telling me to add private pay. Now I can click New and go through the whole process of selecting each field and adding a private pay payer to the patient, but we have built for you a keyboard shortcut. So from your patient, you can hit Control Y, that's Y as in Yankee, and that brings up a prompt here, brings up a screen to add the private pay payer to the patient. You just have to select the relationship itself, hit OK, and there we have it. We have the private pay payer on the patient, And if I was to save this and regenerate that single bill, we would no longer see that error checking message about adding the private pay payer. So that's the mystery that we've unraveled with that unclear error checking message. It now states specifically, go to the patient, add the private pay payer, and that's the update there. So we're happy to deliver that to you. Something to keep in mind, again, that control Y function that I just demonstrated a moment ago, that we built in that functionality because it's our best practice recommendation that every patient have the private pay payer added to them. It allows you to not have the hiccups like we saw today when you're trying to print a private bill, and it allows the system to sort of progress in the way that it's designed. So that is our best practice recommendation, is to have that private pay payer on each patient. And so the control Y function becomes a pretty handy thing to put in there. Another thing to keep in mind is that this change that we're talking about today with that error checking message, this change was delivered over the weekend in an industry service pack. So our online customers, you will already be seeing this if you try to generate a private bill without private pay on the patient. For those of you that are on premise, you may not have this update to your error checking yet. And so as always, if you ever want to check what the status of your billing is, where you're at as far as versions go, you want to select Help and About. And right next to the TriTech logo, you'll see your version line here. We're on 5.14. And then in the bottom right area, you'll see the spot for Industry SP. That's the service pack. Mine states none. It's an internal version, but yours would have a date, a more recent date for those online customers that received this update that we're talking about today. So for those of you that are on premise, it's always best to have a sort of a internal process for when you want to keep your billing updated, whether it's a weekly or monthly thing, to download those files from our website to your server and then apply them from there. And again, that's to make sure that you get the change that we talked about today to that error checking message. And speaking of change, as we move past this first portion, I'm just going to say no to those changes and move into the second portion regarding box 31. Change, as we saw in the error checking message, change is one of the only constants in our workplaces. Whether it's change in regulations, and we all struggle with those, or change in requirements for payers, we certainly struggle with those. Changes in staffing, all those kind of things happen in our facilities and in our workplaces. And staffing changes are one of the things that we're going to talk about as far as what happens in box 31. We all know that people come and people go. Sometimes in your facility, you'll have a great employee or a great staff member, colleague that for whatever reason transitions away from your facility, and you mourn that loss and you've got big shoes to fill. Other times it might be someone that perhaps goes on their merry way and leaves you a little bit of a mess to clean up. But either way, change is always there. So when we're talking about change with our 1500 forms, I'm going to bring up a different call here to demonstrate what we're talking about. So this is a call for I am hungry. Now it's 10:30 here in Iowa, but for those of you on the West Coast, maybe you're having breakfast or maybe you skipped breakfast, so I am hungry might resonate with you this morning. Who knows? But anyway, I'm going to print a single bill here using our Flex form just to show you the 1500 form right on the screen here. So give it a moment to have it generate the claim. So on our 1500 form, if we scroll down to the bottom and look at box 31 in the bottom left-hand corner, this is the signature area. And this is signed by an administrator named Sherlock Holmes. Now, I put in Sherlock Holmes today because we solved the mystery of the previous error checking message, so we're kind of in the mystery theme. But that's what we're talking about here, is the name of the person that appears on box 31. So how do you make that change? What do we do if Mr. Holmes decides to go back to merry old England and is no longer part of our facility? Where do we make those changes and those updates in our billing program? So I'll close out of these. Those updates are made under your codes and your company codes. I'll move this screen over here to the side so we can see what's going on. On the call in question, we're billing company number 1. So that's the company that I'm going to bring up. And it defaults to the Business Info tab. And on the bottom of the Business Info tab is our contact information. So this is the person whose name will appear on our 1500 forms in box 31. So if Mr. Holmes has left, all we need to do is update this information. So perhaps now Dr. Watson has come to work at our facility. So if we make that change here, we can save this change to the company code, and when we regenerate a 1500 form, we would see Dr. Watson's name on the bottom of the form. Something to keep in mind as you're populating the last and first name as well as the title. As we know with 1500 forms, there's a limit to what can fit into those boxes. So you may end up having to abbreviate certain portions of this. You see here that the title is abbreviated in this case. So keep that in mind, that there is a character limit there that you'll have to work with a little bit to get the right things to print for your 1500 form in box 31. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to box 31 is that the name change happens here in the company code, but the trigger to see whether or not anything populates in box 31 is actually determined more by the payer and the TriTech Billing Payer ID that's selected for that particular payer. The reason a name would appear in box 31 is that it's gonna be going to a payer that accepts an electronic signature. There are payers that do not, Medicaid being one of the more common culprits there. So that's something to keep in mind, is that box 31 is in fact driven also by payer and the TriTech Billing Payer ID selected in the patient questionnaire. So that's how you make that change in order to adjust your box 31 populating. You just change the name here in the company code, save it, and your changes will be caught on box 31. So that's what we had for those two topics here today. I'm going to take a look at any questions that have come in. We don't have any questions as of yet. So hopefully that means today's topics were pretty straightforward, and they're hopefully welcome additions, especially with that error checking change, so that you can see exactly what you need to do in order to update anything that gets that error check. So that concludes what we wanted to cover today. We certainly do appreciate you folks taking the time to tune in. There's always a great topic to be discussed each month, and if you miss it, you can always tune back in, but we also do load these webinars to our YouTube page, so you can go to YouTube and search for TriTech EMS Education and get yourself caught up that way as well. Again, we thank you for your time today. Thanks for being part of the TriTech family, and we hope you all have a great day.